Brought to you by Cprime, an Atlassian Platinum and Enterprise Solution Partner, and an Atlassian Verified Vendor. Power scripts for Jira.
Okay, so we've seen how to retrieve information from an issue, but how do you change, update, or add information to an issue? Let me just get rid of all this. And we're going to continue working with our TP45 test issue. So let's say I wanted to change the description of TP45 to something else. So if I jump over to that, you can see what it is right now. And I'll just say now that won't work. Why not? Well, again, we're not in the context of an issue. So we have to make sure we add that issue substitution before. And that's it. Let's run that. Now it just says done because we didn't actually return anything to the screen. If I come over to TP45 and I refresh my browser window, you can see I've changed the description to Hello World. And that's all you need to do to update the value. Now, you do need to make sure that you are using the variables or the custom fields appropriately. And what I mean is we used a string to set a string variable, but there are other types like arrays, like labels use arrays and watchers use arrays. And then we have our date fields. So how would we do that for an array variable? I don't want to confuse it with a regular name. So let's call it new labels. And we need to include these brackets so that it knows it's an array. And we'll say it equals label 1, label 2, label 3. Okay. And I'm just going to scavenge that bit of code and we'll say labels equals new labels. And let's check that out. There. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a label there, and I just erased it. It was called sample epic, and that's just because of the way that I did it. So let me show you what I mean. So what I'm saying here is this equals. I'm saying everything about the issue and its labels equals those things I just specified here. Now what if I wanted to add to the existing labels and not replace them? Well, what you would do is something like this. So let's say I wanted, I'll change these to 4, 5, and 6. I could say something like new labels plus equals key dot labels. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding the current values of the labels of TP45 to this labels array here. So now we'll include all 6 labels, and then I'm setting TP45 labels equal to this new labels array. So that should just add the new labels to the existing labels. And there you can see 1 through 6. So that's all you need to do to set the value. And now, setting the value like this is only possible for custom fields and variables that are the standard variables on the variable resolution page. There are a few things that you need to do with special routines, like adding comments and transitioning issues, and we'll go over that later. So let's talk about how we sort of navigate between subtasks and parent to subtasks. It's actually pretty easy for the parent side of things. All I need to do is say key.parent, and I should get the value of TP48's parent, which is TP47. I didn't save. TP47. So that's all you need to do to get the value of the parent. So what I could do is something like this. I could say string parent equals and then you use the parent keyword in your variable substitution, and you can get information about the parent. Story 3. So that's how you can switch between the issue and its parent in the code. And so every line you could be working off a different issue. Now, it's a little bit different going from parent to child or going to the subtask. And what that looks like, we're going to start diving into routines here shortly. And routines are functions that use, they're built off the native Jira API, but it may take 30 or 40 lines of code to do this routine that we're going to do in one. And that's part of the power of simple issue language, and it's certainly what it means by simple. So what we can do is we can just say return subtasks tasks parent, and that will return all the subtasks for TP48, and I believe there are 2. Now you'll notice I didn't use the substitution here. That's because it's not needed. It's a parameter being passed to a function, and the value is going to be TP47 or the parent of TP48. It's just going to be a string of the issue key, and that's all the function needs. And we get an array of values, TP48 and TP49. So if I wanted to write these subtasks to a variable, I'd have to do something like this, string, use my brackets to specify an array, call it, and then I could actually have a list of the subtasks. And if I want to take a step further, and we talked about this a little bit during the syntax video, I could say for string s in s tasks, and that will actually loop through each subtask. And I could do something like run along. This time I'm going to use the substitution dot summary, and don't forget your semicolon ever. Okay. And now you'll see subtask 1, subtask 2. And that's how we work with subtasks and parents. Now, how do we do the same thing with links, you ask? So the way you work with links is this. I'm going to say string links equals linked issues, and this is another routine. And again, we'll use parent because I know there's already a link on that. Now this time I'm going to say runner log links and the reason I did it this way instead of this looped way is just to kind of show you some type conversions that happen automatically within SIL. So I am, without even realizing it, almost converting an array of values into a single string right here. That happens automatically. And that can happen between numbers and strings and dates and strings. It's something that's taken for granted and not as easy in other languages. See, I'm not getting anything. Let me specify issue. There, TP47. And I'm leaving in some of these bloopers just so you can see how I debug things, even though that really wasn't a bug. So I specify TP46 because I added a link to TP46 and I just knew it was there. Now, that returned TP47. Some other things I could do with this, I can add some additional parameters. I'm going to jump over to the documentation. I don't have these routines memorized because there are hundreds. I can also specify the link type name and the direction if I really want to essentially like zoom in on specific links and directions. And here's an issue of using, an example of using blocks. So then I could do the same thing that I did for subtasks. Let's say string L in links. And I could perform some action here as I loop through each individual link, just making sure I use substitution to specify the specific linked issue that I'm referring to. So it's very easy to navigate the hierarchy, so to speak. One thing I do want to point out is behind the scenes, behind the curtains, so to speak, in Jira, epics are really links. At least that's how it works in the database. So, in order to work with epics appropriately, you should treat them as links. All right, what about creating new links? Well, that is also a routine. And what you would do for that is I'm going to go back to the documentation and just grab the syntax for our link issue routine. All you need to do is specify issue 1, issue 2, and the type. I'm going to say I want to link 47. I'll link it to, let's see, link it to TP45. And I need to specify the type. I think that is the type. And we'll just run that. Let's see what happens if I go now into, see what I do, 47 to 45. We'll go into 47. And now you can see it's blocked by 45. So let's look at the other routines for links. See, we've already used linked issues, which returns an array of all the issues that are linked to an issue. Link issue, which creates the link. Get issue link details, which will return information, more information about the link. So the linked issues routine only returns the key of the issue that was linked. This will return the direction, the description, more details about the nature of the link in case you are looking for a specific type of link. And then unlink. What if you want to break the link between two issues? You can use unlink. Now, I also mentioned about adding issues to an epic, and there's a lot of questions about this, so I'm just going to demonstrate. So I'm going to create a new issue. And just call it no epic. It's TP50. Does not belong to any epic. So what I'm going to do, so we're going to link TP50, and we want to link it to our sample epic, TP44. And we just say the link type is epic story link, which I believe, if my memory serves me, is the type in the Jira database. All right, my fingers are crossed. And no. Now, let's see what happens. Let's use this as a learning experiment. Okay, nothing was returned. Okay, so I just checked my database, and it looks like I got that right. But what I got wrong, what's this? I got the order wrong. So the first parameter is what is getting linked to, and the second parameter is what is parameter 1 getting linked by, I guess. So what happened is I was treating the story as the epic. So I need to switch places here. And this time, I'm in my sample epic. If I hit refresh, there's our no epic test story. So there you have it. Treat epics like links. And like I said, I'm not making it up. You can see in the actual database there is an epic story link because that's how it's really handled behind the scenes. I also want to mention this other routine called all linked issues. And unlike the first one, this one will get you the system link types, like subtask and issues and epics. So the first one, linked issues, will just get you standard ones like blockers and relates. But get all linked issues will allow you to look for subtasks or epics. Now, you don't need to use this for subtasks because there is a subtask routine, but you could if you wanted to. Okay, next on the agenda, how do we create new issues? Glad you asked. Well, over in my documentation, we just use the create issue routine. Now, there are a lot of parameters for the create issue routine. And that's because there's a lot of things that go into creating an issue. Let's start with the simple one. Let's wipe all this out. I like to sometimes just add things as a comment like this for later reference. So we'll just leave it there. You know what? We'll leave the big one too. Alright, but we're going to start with the small one. So we have 4 parameters that we need to pass, and well, let's see. I was going to say which ones are required. Okay, they're all required. All 4 are required. So what we do is we just say we'll use test project. And this has to be in quotes because it is a string as a parameter. You're not actually passing like a issue in context or anything weird. Parent issue. So if you were creating a subtask and you wanted it to add that subtask to an issue, you would include the issue ID here. Maybe we can use that in another example, but for this one, let's just make it blank because there will be no parent. And then we'll say story. And for the summary, we'll say this was created itself. Yay. Okay. And I'm also going to say return, because what's going to happen is when this issue is created, we're going to get the ID back of the issue, which is very useful in scripts. So let's run it, and it says TP51 will be the key of our new issue. And there it is. This was created with SIL. And so what I could have done is I could have said something like string parent, and then parent equals per2. And then could have done a second one, but here we'll pass the ID of parent we'll make it a subtask. Now you have to make sure the issue types are spelled correctly. And mine never are, so I'm just going to check. Okay, capital S, lowercase t, dash in the middle, good to go. Okay, so we're creating the first issue. We're going to create, this will probably be TP52. We're going to take the value of the key use it in this second line, which will create a subtask under TP52, in theory. Okay. It didn't return anything. You can see how helpful adding those runner log messages would be. But here you have it. So I created this parent issue, and then we created the subtask. And that's what I mean by it's very helpful to get that key of the new issue returned, because you might have more to do with it. All right, well, let's look at the long one. All right. And boy, is it long. What I like to do with this one is set it up like this, just because it becomes easier to read. So we say something like string project key. And I'm not going to assign any values right now. We'll come back and do that. Well, all right, now most of these are strings, but that's about to end. And I'm being very bad with my semicolon. Okay, so components can have more than one, so those are arrays. Due date would be a date, and that's very simple. You just type date. Estimate would be an interval, so there's an interval type. It's just like when you're filling out a work log, you use 1H for hour, 1D for day. Same thing with an interval. Security level string. Custom field mappings is an array. Okay, so semicolon or die. Okay, so now let's set some values. Project key equals TP. I'm just going to double check the documentation. So only the first 4 that we used originally are required for this. We can just use that, leave it like this, and it will pass a null value, and then that's fine. And then you can say story. And that's all that's required. But as you can see, we can set the priority, the description, we can add components, due date, and all those other things. But what I really wanted to talk about are the custom field mappings, because all the time it comes up, well, I want to do more than these. I have custom fields I need to set. How do I do that? Well, let me just check my available custom fields here. We'll go back to winery, and oops, this is a database custom field. We'll pick on black box some more. So what I could do is I could say, and I'm going to do this a slightly different way just so you see different ways of doing things. Say plus equals winery. And then plus equals black box. So it's a key value pair. What that means is position 0 of the array is the name of the field. Position 1 would be the value of that field. Then you go to position 2, name of the field. Position 3, value. So you go name, value, or label value, label value. So that's how you create this. So let's say I want, what are my options for state? Oh, It's a dependent field. I can't set it. Okay. All right, well, let's try that. Might be some capitalization issues. Not 100% confident. That is 2 words. Needs to be 1 word. Make sure it's 1 word down here. So this is what happens when you get an error. I hover over the X and it said encounter date at line 11. And it was expecting basically something else other than I gave it. But I know it's because there was a space. So now if I do it again, looks good. Now I know it's going to create an issue. Let's see if winery came through. Jump over to our new issue, TP54. And it did. Yay. Okay, great. So that's how you use the custom fields mappings parameter. But it doesn't end there. Let's say I have even more I want to do. Well, you could do it with the custom field mappings, or you could just say string new key equals, and that will create the new issue, which at this point would be TP55. But then I could just use substitution, because at this point in the script, the new issue is created. And I could say dot signee equals me, or I could say add it to an epic. Link issues, so on and so forth, just using that new key. And that's how you create issues in a nutshell. Alright, so that's how we just saw how to create issues. What about transitioning an issue to the next status? Well, that is done with, can you guess? A routine. The auto transition routine. And again, there's sort of the short version and long version. So let's white this out. Okay, so we'll pick on TP54, and we want to go to in progress. So let's say return. All right, fingers crossed that I have the right parameter, and we'll refresh. And it was in to do, and now it's in progress. Yay. What you can also do is, if I was inside the workflow editor, you can get the ID of specific issue transitions and use the ID if you prefer. Alright, so what are these other guys? So you have 3 other parameters that will allow you to sort of override anything blocking the possible, or potentially block the transition. So sometimes you're in a state which doesn't allow you to perform the transition you're in, and this skip state check will sort of force that through for you. Same thing with skip conditions and skip validator. So even if there's some other permissions or still logic that is preventing you from transitioning the issue, you can just kind of blow right through that. So you may or may not want to use that. I mean, if there's a validator on there preventing the issue, that may be a valid reason why it shouldn't transition. So it's really up to you. And in order to use those, we would just pass true-false flags like that. And that's all there is to transitioning an issue. If I wanted to check the status of an issue after its transition, I could say, give me something like, this is different syntax, just so you see, tp54.status. And that would give me the status after the transition. I don't know what it didn't like. Let's see. Yeah, in progress. So then you could continue working with the status now that you have that information. And that is really it with transitioning issues.